the anxiety. I like the nervousness that it gives me because it motivates me, it focuses me, it pushes me.
Like you might be humming along and you might think everything's fine.
But that's not the way it works. I mean, this is making a deal with the devil, right?
And so we're idolizing this self, which is an object, which is idol worship.
I want to wake up just a little bit nervous, so I'm hustling and pushing and making money. Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right, Sir Daniel. So in our last conversation, where we spoke about the 6 stages of disease, specific accumulation, there was something you said that triggered a thought that I wanted to run by you because it came up twice in the last week, and it's possible it's something I've noticed before in myself and others, but there was a realness to this that I kind of have to get out.
Let's go.
So, two people I'm speaking to, both who expressed to me that they're dealing with various levels of anxiety. Okay, one in the form of OCD and one in the form of just, general anxiety, but both anxiety. And in talking to them, they both repeated something to the effect of, I like it because I like the anxiety. I like the nervousness that it gives me because it motivates me, it focuses me, it pushes me. But, I don't like when it gets to this level. And I'm like, to both of them, like, well, that's not the way it works. I mean, this is making a deal with the devil, right? This is saying, like, I want to drink alcohol and I want to stop when it's appropriate. It's just not possible in some way. And it was both around what the motivation that they were looking for specifically was motivation to earn money. And they felt like their anxiety around it pushed them towards there. And they wanted that. They saw that as good. But they didn't want it to be so much that it consumed them. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Like, if you...
Yeah, I mean, it's a form of justification. I'm okay if I'm a little bit sick.
It's more than okay if I'm a little bit sick. They want it.
Well, that's what they're saying.
If you
But
gave
again,
them
it's
the choice,
right.
If you gave them the choice, no anxiety, without knowing anything else, no anxiety, or let's quantify this anxiety in some way, an anxiety that doesn't surpass a level of 5. They'll say, oh, give me that every day of the week. I want to wake up just a little bit nervous, so I'm hustling and pushing and making money. So it's not like someone saying, I'm okay if I'm 10 pounds overweight because it's not so bad, but they don't really want to be 10 pounds overweight.
Right.
It's someone saying, I prefer to be in this state so that I get the most out of it.
Right.
This is a different level of sickness. This is not minimization.
It's a form of sickness that we all deal with in the over-identification with our personal narrative. And so what happens is, if my story is infused with this level of anxiety, this level of comfortable kind of acceptance of the anxiety, then that's my story. And if I keep repeating it, that's my identity. It's who I am. And so if you're telling me that you're going to take that away from me, you're going to take this anxiety away,
so you see it
you're
as an
stripping
identification.
away my identity. You're literally stripping away who I am. And who are you to do that? And I'm not comfortable with that. And then who am I going to be if you take this away from me? And that's very scary. The unknown is very scary. And so all it is an over-identification with the personal narrative. And the personal narrative is composed of all the aspects of conditioning. We get comfortable in our little...
Okay, so you see
self.
it as a form of identification. I've identified with...
I've over-identified with it. It is me.
The result
It's like
of
saying
it,
you want to take my pinky off. The anxiety is my pinky.
So do you think it's the result that they've over-identified or the actual problem? In this case, is it the anxiety that they've identified with, or the money that they've identified with, and they don't know how they'll make the money without
It's all
anxiety.
of it. It's like, to delineate it is silly unless we're talking to the individual specifically, because they're going to give us cues through their speech, through their projection of their innermost, let's say, psychological stuff, because it wants to get resolved anyway. So what happens is we're going to project it anyway. And when we're talking to the person's going to really do a great job of projecting all of that kind of repression, all of that stuff, that accumulation. And so we'll be able to get into it. But ultimately, it's all of it, right? We can't delineate it in the moment. It's all of it. It's the over-identification with my story. It's the over-identification with my conditioning. It becomes a part of my personality. It becomes who I am that, and now you can't separate it. And if you come for it, I'm going to get angry because I'm going to get scared, and I'm going to want to self-preserve. And all of those primal instincts kick in. And now we're going to get into an argument.
Do you understand why this topic like excited me the way it did? Because I don't think I've communicated it well enough.
Obviously you're telling me so let's go.
It's that the average person would say, I don't want anxiety. Like that's where they would start. Meaning that's where they would start. And it wasn't until we dug in that we said, yes, you do. Like you actually do.
But you see,
want this.
You're coming for their personality. You're coming for their self. And now it's a fight or flight reflex that's going to kick in. It's an existential threat, what you're doing.
Meaning both of these conversations started, that's what I want to be clear, both of these conversations started with people asking me for help dealing with their anxiety. And when I asked a few questions, it was clear they did not want to eliminate it. Mm-hmm. They wanted help taming it.
Our job is to highlight it for them so they can have the data. With the data, they can make better informed decisions. That's all.
Right.
Because that pathway might be the exact pathway, and it has a specific timing, and it's going to get them to the point of their suffering or their salvation. One leads to the other. But who am I to take you off that pathway? Okay, why do I think I know better?
Should we go there now? This is something you've taught me. Let's say that's a whole different conversation.
Just remind. I don't teach, man.
What?
I just remind. I don't teach.
Who am I to take you off that pathway? This has been so important to me because a big part of my own identity has been of helping others and, whatever it is, that idea. And you've kind of helped straighten me out in some of those thoughts.
You straighten yourself out. I provide reflection.
Sure. Right. On some of those thoughts, which is like, say the words again, that about taking who am I to take someone off of their pathway of suffering? We need a whole conversation around that. So we'll put that to the side.
Table it, no problem.
Table it. But I do want to say what I shared with them. I didn't share it with the first one because the first one was the first time I kind of heard it in this way, where someone coming to me with anxiety, and as I asked certain questions, it was clear that they didn't want to get rid of it. They had no interest in what I had to offer because I don't know any way to tame the beast. Like, I know ways to put out the fire. I don't know ways to, direct the fire, so to speak. So the second one, when I was speaking to him, I said to him, you know what it sounds like? It's a form of idol worship. A lot of people think idol worship doesn't exist anymore, but it sounds to me like a form of idol worship. And tell me why. So, right, there is the one, right? The one. Hashem, God, whatever, right? The one.
The creative source.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And this is the source of our energy, the direction for our life, who has a plan for us that is unfolding, and we become a part of it. A part of that, whatever. Okay, I don't want to get into a whole theological decision, but this feels like idol worship in the sense of, let me get my energy from a different source. Let me get my energy from anxiety, from fear. Let me worship it to a certain extent. I will not let go of it. I don't want to let go of it because I don't know who I will be without it. And therefore, I'm going to continue to try to figure out how to direct the fire versus putting out the fire, because this is the idol that I'm serving. It's a form of serving the idol of anxiety, because it very literally gives them an energy and gives them a power and gives them a focus and gives them a hunger, gives them, I didn't use this word before, but it gives them an identity that now they can tap into as a source for creation. which is, kind of, we all want to create something. We want to do something. We want our lives and our days to mean something. And this is their source of creation. And they're getting something from it. So they're serving this idol and they're getting everything the idol has to offer. Like, this is all, you want it, here, take it. You want anxiety, you're serving this now. Have all of it. Does that framework work for you? Does it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, there are just many ways of looking at it, and we can continue to kind of expand on it and open it up a little bit more. And ultimately, this identity, where is it? What is it? It's my mind, right? It's everything that I think about myself, right? And so if we were going to use your reference point of idol worship, it's like, who am I really idolizing? I'm not idolizing the anxiety, because the anxiety is a component of mind, a component of thought, a component of conditioning. So I'm idolizing my mind. I'm elevating it, basically, because it gets us things. See, the mind, again.
Right, you're saying I'm idolizing kind of my mind, my plan, my strategy. I'm idolizing that.
You're idolizing yourself, and yourself is this separate thing. It's this story, this narrative. So when we get caught up in that place, and we all do, we end up idolizing ourselves. And what is myself? Myself is an objectification of who I really am. And so with objects, we can pick them up and put them down. So if I say my phone, my is the subject, phone is the object. I could pick it up, I could put it down. Even though we over-identify with the phone, we end up carrying it around. It's like an extended, hand at this point.
But it's still separate from us.
But it's separate. And so when we say the word myself, we need that same little space between my and self to recognize that my is the subject, self is an object. Self becomes an objectification of who I am, an outward representation, a story, an anxiety, whatever it is. And so we're idolizing this self, which is an object, which is idol worship.
So the reason I like problems is because identifying problems properly helps us find solutions faster. So what would
maybe one day we can get rid of the illusion of there being any problems. That'll be a whole nother story, but carry on, please.
Right. That could be a separate conversation. In this sense, if we identify it as idol worship, so I like what you did. You took it from worshiping the anxiety or the specific, because it's really not that. It's
part of a package.
Right. It's
and what is that package?
Self.
And that self is an object. It's
right.
not the true
And the truth
me.
is, it's all of it. Because the question I asked you earlier about, was it the anxiety or the money? It's all one package. This is one package that I created.
It doesn't help us.
I know the way.
We get lost in delineation.
Right.
It's one thing.
I know the way. I know how to create what I want to create. And this is my path, because no one else has worked until now. So I've created this recipe, and no one's going to F with it. And then if every once in a while it gets a little too salty, I'm going to ask someone for help removing the excess salt, but I'm not willing to challenge the recipe.
That's right.
Good. So the solution for this non-problem.
Put down your phone. Put down yourself.
Put down yourself.
Put it down.
Surrender.
It's the block. Yeah, get out of the way, man.
Surrender.
Easier said than done, no doubt.
Much easier.
But some of us who have worked within, let's say, some of these healing modalities that allow us to transcend mind, recognize that, man, there is actually a blueprint to doing it. We just aren't, let's say, taught, practiced in it. Sometimes we're, completely oblivious to it. So there are various ways to put down this story that we keep telling ourselves.
Should I tell you what I share with the second individual? Which it actually occurred to me in the conversation. I never articulated in this way, but I'll go back to 12 steps framework.
Sure.
Step 1, admitting we have a problem. Step 2, recognizing, believing that there is a solution. Right? Those two, we can't do anything unless we recognize that we're in a situation we're not happy with. Unless we can admit that to ourselves, there's nowhere to go from here. If you think everything is okay, then why would you listen to anything anyone has to say? Even if you think everything's a disaster, if you don't believe it could be better, why would you even try? Right? Just be some hope, a little bit of hope, some candle that we can ignite. Good. And then step 3 seems to be this bizarre addition, which reads, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God, which is a form of saying surrender or trust. I'm going to turn my life over to a different way. I'm going to let go and I'm going to choose a different way. Step 4 is where it goes into the nitty-gritty work. A personal inventory. I'm going to go into my fears. I'm going to go into my resentments. And that's the nitty-gritty work. It almost seems on its face that I can go from 1 to 2 to 4. I recognize my problem. I believe there's a solution. And I start working on that solution. Like, what is this trust thing that it interjects in between there that I need to, in step 3, that I need to have before I start the work? And that's what I shared with him, is that, you're kind of, he obviously hasn't even recognized the scope of the problem. He's not there yet. He's not. There's too much anxiety for him. But there's some of that still needs work, right? Some of that foundation, the recognition of the problem and the belief in a solution. But that next step of a trust that there's a better way, like that has to happen. And what he asked me was, and I didn't have the answer for him in the moment. I said, I have to think about it. And we haven't continued the conversation. Is, okay, so how is that trust built? Because when you said the word to let go of, right, separating my and self, and then being willing to let go of that. There's a surrender that happens. For that surrender to happen, there also has to be trust. There has to be safety. How is that created? What practical steps can someone take, especially someone who's had a fair amount of trauma and challenges in their life, to build trust?
Requires a leap of faith.
It just does.
Yes.
And that's maybe why suffering is...
Because you could never... How are you going to establish that level of trust in the unknown, even if someone else says, I've been down this path and there's a net, don't worry, just do it. No matter what they say, if the fear of the unknown is still present within that individual, until they prove it for themselves, there'll always be doubt. There'll always be that little lack of trust. And so it requires testing the system. How do you do that? And that's why the first step is what? Recognizing there's a problem. How do you know? Like, you might be humming along and you might think everything's fine, but how do you really know? Right? It requires testing the system. And much like...
Correct.
Right. So, like in the scientific process, if I have a thesis, I'm not looking for confirmation bias. I'm not looking for information that supports my theory. I want to try to disprove it. And if I try to disprove it actively and it still withstands that process, now I have something that, let's say, I can be a little bit more comfortable with. And so we're constantly trying to disprove our theory to validate it. And if we invalidate it, then great. We get to throw out the theory. It doesn't hold up. It doesn't stand up. And so if I keep saying to myself, I'm good, my kind of reflection on that is, well, God bless, I hope you are, but just check. Check along the way, make sure. And now how do you do that? Like, how do you take this kind of look
actually
under the hood?
Right. If you look at the way step 1 reads exactly, may help flesh that out. It doesn't say we admit we have a problem, because many people can admit I have a problem. I have too much anxiety. The language is different. The language is, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Our lives had become unmanageable. So in this case, that's probably the recognition that's needed. We admitted we were powerless over anxiety.
Right, but you had a symptom manifesting loud enough where you got to that point.
Sure.
What happens when you don't? What happens when you're humming along, going through life, and you just don't know what you're accumulating. You don't. I mean,
Right, but
you don't know what
someone
you
who's
don't know.
drinking too much alcohol, the first time he calls someone for help, what do you think the question is? It's how do I manage my alcohol, not how do I get rid of my alcohol. That's not the thought. The thought isn't.
It's like what you're identifying with the individual
Right,
with anxiety.
same thing with
It's the
anxiety.
exact same thing.
Okay, so it's interesting. So it's kind
It's
of
like
the same.
I want to treat the symptom, but I'm not willing to deal with the cause.
Right, so it's
It's
not.
basically what we're saying, because it's much easier. We've got accustomed to treating symptoms because treating symptoms is a quicker way out. You can give me a pill to treat the symptom. But if you tell me I have to, you can give me this pill for weight loss and great. But if you tell me I have to rearrange my entire, lifestyle, it's like, man, I'm not going there. That's too much work. I want the easy way out. So help me manage my symptoms, please.
As I'm talking, I just figured out what
That's what integration's supposed to do.
Yeah, that there's
It's supposed to reflect on us so we
Right.
can see ourselves clearly and come up with the answer because it's buried inside of us. It's already there.
right, is that it's exactly the same thing. What we're doing with alcohol, what I did with pornography, we do also with feelings. Is we take pornography and we say, I want just enough of it to have me feel less loneliness, more excitement, but not too much that I feel demoralized, ashamed, unhappy, lethargic, etc.
I don't want to see why I need it in the first place.
We don't want to. But then eventually it raises to a level that we say, okay, obviously I cannot manage pornography, so I'm just going to let it go completely from my life. And we do the same thing with emotions, where we say, let me see if I'm more powerful
Good
than
luck
anxiety.
letting it go. If you don't treat the underlying cause, you're still at a symptomatic level.
Of course,
where
that's
it's
why
like
there
you're
isn't.
not going to let it go. You're
Of-
going to fight against it, and it's going to grind against you.
Of course, that's why there's not only one step. But the first step is recognizing that this is more powerful than me, in the sense of either my two choices are essentially either I don't have this in my life or I have this in my life. And it wields a power over me. Like they say, first I took a drink, then the drink took me.
Yeah, man. I get that. And I used to drink socially. I was what I would call an unconscious drinker. I didn't have a drinking problem, but if I was in a social setting and you offered me a drink, it was a socially accepted thing to do. It kind of lowers my inhibitions. Sure. If you look at any of my old photos and any kind of social setting, I always
Had a drink.
have a drink in my hand. But I was not an alcoholic. And it was like a why not? Why not have a drink? Of course. You're offering it to me. I'll take it. No problem. And then I realized after a little while, well, wait, what's the intention for me to have the drink in the first place?
Social lubricant.
But I didn't even look at it that way. You just offered it to me. I took it. I was
Oh, you weren't even
unconsciously
thinking.
accepting the
Right.
drink because it's like, of course, I'll just drink it. I'm used to it. It's fine. You're drinking. I'm drinking here. Let's have a good time. So I recognized, man, I'm doing this behavior unconsciously. So then the dynamic flipped, and this is actually post psychedelics. The dynamic flipped where if the drink was offered to me, I would ask myself, well, what would be my intention to actually take the drink? I would have to have a good reason to do it. And if I couldn't find a good reason, it was like, nah, no, thank you. Frankly, I haven't had a drink in, 6 years or whatever it is since I started down this pathway. Actually, let me take that back. I did have, I had Guinness in Ireland because it felt like, so appropriate. It was one of these milestone moments. But anyways, the idea was I became, so I was an unconscious drinker, and then I became a conscious kind of abstainer. The dynamic flipped a little bit. From the AA standpoint, I think there are two steps missing.
Go ahead.
I think there's the 0 step before the first step,
Which
of
is?
check if you have a problem. Before you get to the point where you say, I have a problem, that's already a symptom.
Right.
So what I'm saying is get behind it, get ahead of it, whatever you want to call it. Check. You should have a way to take an introspective look to see what a problem looks and feels like in the first
This
place
is the
before it gets
AA
too late.
way is the path of suffering. If you walked into a meeting
So let's get ahead of it,
and
right?
you said, I'm worried that in 5 or 10 years, I may have a problem with alcohol, but right now I'm drinking. Why not? They'll look at you like you're crazy for being there.
Right. And this is part of the problem. And
That's a symptom of society. Okay, so
Right.
you said
So-
2 steps missing. So step 0 and the other step.
But basically, so this is kind of an expansion on the framework, building it out further, right?
You're right. How do we
Improving
meet
on it.
How do we meet someone 10 years before they come into a meeting?
Exactly. Get ahead of it before.
How do we meet it at accumulation instead of disruption? How do we meet at
Exactly.
inflammation instead of disruption?
Exactly.
Understood. And what's the other step that you feel is missing?
The 13th step. The 13th step is getting past the point where we stand up and say, hello, my name is Daniel and I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict. Because some of these people have been saying this and they're 10, 15 years clean already. But yet they're still saying that they are an alcoholic or an addict, which reinforces it in the consciousness, which creates a reality that's sponsored by that pathway of thinking. And so you never get clean. When do you get to the point where you say, I used to be an alcoholic? You know?
You're 100% right. This was my experience. And it actually, the aha moment came in a conversation between, there were a few of us, but me and you in there. And I said something to the effect of, I recognize that I can relapse tomorrow. And I think a couple of you guys looked at me like, but what do you mean? What do you mean you can relapse tomorrow? Why would you say that? And to me, it was just so second nature. That's the way you spoke in the meetings. It was a form.
That was the conditioning.
A form of demonstration of humility that I recognize I can relapse tomorrow. And the problem with that, I realized, is that, say Instagram, right? Which in general, I have no reason to be there. And it wasn't something that I used regularly pre this new phase where I'm sharing a podcast and I'm on there and it's kind of my form of communication with the world. There's Facebook, there's TikTok, and there's YouTube. And as a podcast, we use all of those. But the one that I use is Instagram. Another thing about Instagram is it has a lot of pictures of people scantily clad regularly floating around this thing. So with that mindset of I am an addict, then unintentionally bumping into a picture could tell me, once I have that voice in my head, then I have a built-in excuse for just going down this rabbit hole. I've lost my free choice. I've seen the picture and now it's now it's there. So there was this wrestling match when I got on Instagram. Did I see it? Did I not? If I did, then how far can I go? And eventually I realized,
accumulation.
like, right, this is holding me back. I am still a free man, because that's what it is. It's a form of I am not free. That's what it's told. That's what you're talking about. I am not free to see a picture and not think an addictive thought. And I had an excuse built in. I am an addict. And while it was so necessary for me to completely embody how real my problem was so that I can finally take it seriously, my new problem became how much I was embodying and identifying with this idea that I had a problem. And then it was tripping me up in other ways. I see a picture and I say, oh, of course I'm on their profile and looking at a few other pictures because I'm an addict. Of course, nothing. I'm a free man at every stage of the game.
And it's all sponsored by the way we think about it all, right? By that story we keep telling ourselves. So it's very dangerous to keep telling ourselves that we are an addict or an alcoholic when we've been clean for so many years. There has to be a point where you get liberated from the process. Because
right,
otherwise, you're not free. What is a free man? You keep saying free man. That means you're liberated.
Right, 100%.
So the pathway is designed to get you liberated. But if it doesn't ultimately give you liberation, then it entraps you within the organization. And an organization needs participants. So liberation is an existential threat to organizations. They don't want to give you that final out. And I have this beef with religion to a degree, not just the program. You know, and the architecture is beautiful and it's a wonderful tool, but it's not fully finished. It's not fully baked, right? And the issue is it traps us within the organization. Therefore, we get no liberation.
So when you say religion, organized religion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because
right, so the organization of it.
The whole purpose of religion is to grant us liberation.
Right.
But if it traps us within the establishment, within the organization, never gives us liberation, and it's a great business model, but it's a terrible tool to help people get free.
Right. And listen, that was my experience. And I parroted and said all of these things for the longest time. Once an addict, always an addict. I told my wife before we married that you married an addict and I will most likely relapse at some point in time. These were just ideas that.
Think about that.
Right.
So your accumulation was passed down to her. It spread.
Right.
And guess who's accumulating it now? Now, in her mind, she's saying, wow, my husband could always potentially relapse. Now, I have to watch out for that. Now, that accumulation is getting inflamed.
Right.
And you see how we pass our unconsciousness.
Right. And
So
I
that's
guess
why
this
it's so
is
important to become aware of our unconsciousness so we diminish it, so we don't pass it to everybody, because it's going to come out.
right.
It's dying
And you know
to
what's
come out.
crazy is that I know how this sounds to someone who's steeped in 12 steps. In other words, I know how this would sound to me if I was watching this
It's like sandpaper.
pre-psychedelics. It's
Yeah,
like I
man.
just know they'll listen to this thing and this
Blasphemy.
yeah, it's the worst thing to say. This guy's one day away from
I'm not
this.
diminishing the program. I'm saying that it's a great architecture. Let's build on it.
Yeah.
Let's build on it. Let's advance it. And, let's not put it in a box where it will wither and die.
This fact of the matter is that I was sober yet unfulfilled. That's the fact. And yes, there was a time where I was happier when I was still growing within the program, where I still saw the growth. And then there came a point where I felt stagnant there. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was. And that's what got me looking at it. So there's got to be more than this. There's got to be more. Of course, the first couple of years where I'm hitting milestones of abstinence or sobriety, or the first time I take someone through the 12 steps, yeah, I feel amazing and I feel like I'm doing things I never imagined possible. But then at some point in time, I'm like, is this it?
Right.
Is this it? And all of the language is this.
Because you were feeling the limitation.
Yeah.
And yet you knew and know in, your truest self that there's more to it. And limitation is inappropriate because it prevents everything else from happening. It prevents growth. And we are here to grow. And anything that limits that growth becomes, again, a sort of existential threat to a degree. And that creates a lot of friction inside and disharmony.
Right. It's one of the sad realities of everything, of life, of kind of every single level of growth, is that the rung we're going to need to grab in order to get ourselves up that, like to the next step of the ladder, is the rung we're going to need to let go of in order to move up the next step.
That's why the greatest growth is found in surrender. It's about letting it all go.
Right. Even this idea that has liberated me. It was so liberating to finally say, I am an addict. Wow. This stuff is crazy that I'm doing. I'm not going to try to manage this anymore. I am an addict. Welcome. Here I am in this room full of people who had the same problem I do, and now I can be free from it. And I felt that freedom come, and then I got trapped in that cage.
Right. It's overusing the tool.
Exactly.
And so, lifting weights is great for working out, but if you keep holding the weight and don't let it go, eventually it's going to get very uncomfortable and it's going to, do the opposite of what it was intended to do.
Right.
So every tool, it's like we have to be very cautious with how we use them and not to overuse them and not to over-identify with them, because then they have the exact opposite impact. It becomes something that holds us back and hurts us. And then the thing that gave us, let's say, this sense of freedom becomes very oppressive. And now what do I do? So.
Right. And it feels hard because it feels like the only option is to go back out of the door you came in from, when really there's a 13th step. There's another one past it. And beautiful, beautiful. I'm excited to that we had this conversation. It's important, I think, important for myself to hear myself say some of these things, to articulate it into freedom.
And it's great to share this perspective, right? Because there's
there are
no
a lot
right
of
or
people
wrong
suffering.
to it. It expands people's consciousness. It expands awareness. And frankly, we have to, it's like the 4-minute mile. The 4-minute mile was impossible until somebody broke it. And then after that, everybody's kind of tearing it down. So what happened? It became possible in the mind. So our perspective just shifted. And because our perspective shifted, something that was deemed to be impossible became very possible. And so that's why it's so important for us to share our perspective and share what we're seeing from, our
100%.
kind of leg of the journey.
Yeah, there are a lot of people, and I was there for a while, and I know many others who are in 12 steps for a long time, sober, and unfortunately living very, very mediocre lives, unfulfilled, anxious, depressed. But the anxiety is not that bad. Depression is not that bad.
Right.
Lack of fulfillment is not that bad. And the past was so bad.
It's the lesser of two evils.
Right. That's what it feels like. But
And that's no way to live.
That's no way to live.
Right. And so we have a tool for that. And that's why psychedelics are hitting the scene so hard, because the medical community has come around to realizing that this stuff is breakthrough therapy. And it gives us fresh perspective, and it gives us a way out.
The irony is that it may take a little bit longer to hit the 12 steps, right? The people who've been brought to complete demoralization, who open themselves up, surrendering to a completely new way of life to find liberation and freedom, that this tool that has so much promise, so much potential, not more than promise, potential, so much actual real world results where people have benefited from it, may take a little bit longer to get into that space because of all the conditioning.
Perhaps, but again, maybe a matter of perspective. Maybe, the discussions around Bill W's LSD use, maybe that changes the game a little bit. So I don't know.
Maybe the discussions around his belladonna treatment that led to the creation of the 12 steps to begin with.
There's more to the story, more layers.
There's much more to the story.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the truth and investigate from there. Thank you, Danny.
Man, thank you for your time. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I look forward to much more of this.
Absolutely.